So the purpose of the metal recycling program that we've set up here at the Vancouver Restore is to increase the amount of income that the store receives from the scrap metal that is generated through the donation program. And in order to get the highest value, there are some simple tools that are needed, because what you see may not in fact be what the metal is that we want to recycle. So the simple tools I use is a wire cutter. Magnet is probably the most important tool. File is probably the second most important tool. And then a good impact driver, because screws are the principal contaminant that need to be removed. So we're going to start with aluminum, which for the store is probably the highest earning metal in terms of the volume of material and the price per pound. We earn around $1,500 to $2,000 every 6 to 7 weeks. So the key in doing aluminum recycling is what looks to be all one metal, in fact, is two metals, because what holds the top and the bottom together is a rivet. And the rivet sticks to a magnet, which means the rivet is iron. And iron only brings 7 cents a pound. So in order to get the best value from this particular product, one would have to remove the rivets, which can be labor intensive, and we normally don't have the time to do that. So we in fact would recycle this aluminum product as contaminated aluminum and get about 25 cents a pound. And another example of an aluminum product is a can to go for ceiling lights. And again, there's a steel rivet which brings down the value of the aluminum. And this was another piece of aluminum that I pulled out of the supposedly clean aluminum bin. There's a steel rivet that contaminates the aluminum. And so the buyer of our product, one of the first things they'll do when they get a shipment from us, they'll take their magnet and they'll determine whether or not a load is clean or whether or not a load is contaminated. And from their perspective, they're trying to pay the lowest possible price for the product that you're sending them. Whereas our objective is to get the highest possible price by putting in our labor to clean the materials. So this was an oversight on the part of our volunteer of not getting that out. But again, it's simple to do with a wire cutter. You just remove it. Now this material went from 25 cents a pound to over 40 cents a pound, just by the simple process of removing that one rivet. So if you can't do anything else, you can sell your aluminum as contaminated and get about 20 to 25 cents a pound. But normally we don't stop there, because we want to get upwards of 70 cents a pound if we can. So the next stage for us, an easy product to separate, are aluminum soda cans. And aluminum soda cans bring 45 cents a pound. But you have to be careful. You don't want to put in any food containers, because there's a lining in the food containers, or in the bottle caps, there's a plastic liner, and that downgrades the value of the aluminum. So if you put food containers in with your pop cans, you'll probably lose 5 to 10 cents a pound. So be sure if you do soda cans that you just do the cans. The pie tins, the aluminum foil, and the food containers can still go in with the general aluminum contaminated. So the next grade of aluminum that we seek to separate is called cast aluminum. You can tell it's cast aluminum by the little circles. That's where the molten metal is poured into the cast in order to come up with this particular shape. And cast aluminum brings us 44 cents a pound. And it comes in a variety of shapes. The top of a light fixture. And again, if you don't remove all the screws or pins that are iron, it'll drop the value of the cast aluminum again back to contaminated aluminum, which would be about 25 cents a pound. The next grade of aluminum we go for is called sheet aluminum or rolled aluminum. And it's aluminum that can be either rolled or bent into the shape that it is. And so again, you check with your magnet. Oh, see there, I thought it was aluminum by its color, but in fact it sticks to a magnet. So if I had recycled these together, my shipment would have been considered contaminated aluminum rather than clean aluminum.
And which metal is that sticks?
Yeah, contamination is magnetic materials or iron or steel, whereas aluminum is non-magnetic and it isn't attracted to a magnet. Now these two shapes are very similar, and I thought this was aluminum and it isn't. This one looks like it's yellow brass, just by the color, and that's another deception. Color of material is very deceptive, which is where the file comes in. And the first thing I do is file it and then look at the crack, and the crack is silver in color. So I know what appears to be yellow brass is just the plating on aluminum, so I can recycle this as sheet aluminum. And this was another product that visually appears to be yellow brass. When you turn it over, it's silver. So the base metal is aluminum, and it just has a yellow brass plating on it. And sheet aluminum, clean with no contamination, brings 42 cents a pound. And then our highest two grades are called extruded aluminum, principally window frames, sliding glass door frames, but not exclusively. Track lighting may contain some extruded aluminum, and also in computer products, where this cooling fan came out of. And how one can tell a product is extruded is if you look at the shape and it can't be bent or rolled into the shape, then it's extruded. And what extruded means is the molten metal is put through an injection mold that's in this shape. So after it cools, coming out of the injection mold, this is called extruded aluminum. And there's two grades that we shoot for. This particular one is clean, and it's the highest grade of aluminum, and it brings 78 cents a pound. So if you don't throw it in with your contaminated, you go from 25 cents a pound to 78 cents a pound. And this is another piece of extruded. When you look at the end, you can't bend that into that shape. It has to go through an injection mold. Now, it's some common forms of contamination. This was the weather stripping that I took out of a door frame. And originally, I thought by the color that this would be aluminum contaminated with the weather stripping. But it surprised me when I had put a magnet on it. And this is the first time I've seen this. It's actually iron. So had I thrown this in with aluminum, I would have contaminated the aluminum load. Other forms of contamination, here's a piece of rubber that's used as weather stripping. So in order to make this clean aluminum, that weather stripping has to be removed. And it's generally a pretty simple process. It normally slides out, or you can pull it out. And again, by that simple process, I've gone from 25 cents a pound to 78 cents a pound. On that same product, there was glued on a magnetic strip, and so in order to clean up this piece, you have to take a knife and slip it under the magnetic strip and peel it off at where the glue is. Here's another frame, and in this case, the contamination is iron staples. So in order to upgrade this particular product from contaminated to clean, those staples would have to be removed. And here's a screen door frame, and when you apply a magnet to it, there's a little piece of steel in there. There's a spring inside the hinge. And so that's why you need to check everything with a magnet. Because if I put this in with clean, and the buyer checks it on his end and finds that I have iron in there, I've gone from clean aluminum to contaminated aluminum. And on this piece of window frame, the contaminant is the caulking that's on there. So these particular products, depending on the amount of material, if it's less than 5% by weight, they call it lightly contaminated extruded. And lightly contaminated would bring 46 cents a pound, whereas the clean extruded with no contamination is considered 1% contamination, brings 78 cents a pound. So those are the basics of aluminum recycling and ways of upgrading. And the key is, if you have clean products, you want to make sure you don't cross-contaminate it with contaminated aluminum products, because the buyer will downgrade your whole shipment based on what they see and what their magnet tells them when they check the load. So the next most valuable material for the restore is yellow brass. And the most common products that yield yellow brass are plumbing fixtures like faucets and drains, electric light fixtures, chandeliers that are yellow brass, and hardware, doorknobs, and potentially a few hinges. In order to get the most value out of those products, however, requires a fair amount of labor. So I'll start with a common faucet. Here's one that hasn't been disassembled by the volunteers. And there's a variety of materials in there that can be salvaged. And again, remember the important tools are our magnet to recover iron material contamination and our file. Because the appearance of the housing for the faucet appear to be a silver or aluminum color, but often this, when you check it with a magnet, often this piece that encloses the faucet will be iron. And so if you mix those two, you've gone from iron at 7 cents a pound to either zinc die cast, which would be 50 cents a pound, or sometimes the housing is actual yellow brass. And again, the way I find out whether it's zinc die cast or yellow brass is to take the file and file a little V, and in this case it's a silver color and it's not magnetic. So this would be a product that's called zinc die cast, which I'll discuss later. And then these pieces are internal to the faucet, and again, checking with my magnet, it's not magnetic and it has the yellow cast to it, so this would be yellow brass. Here's some fittings. They don't stick to a magnet. And again, from experience of doing hundreds of faucets, I know those connections, when they are not magnetic, are yellow brass, because I filed them in the past. Here are two additional pieces of yellow brass that are the ends to the copper pipe. And then here's the copper pipe that was cut off. And there's two different grades of copper pipe that I'll discuss. Number one pipe, which has no solder contamination, and number two, which has some solder contamination. And just out of safety concerns, I recycle the pipe to faucets as number 2 copper pipe. And here's another fitting, checking with the magnet, it's non-magnetic, so I put it with the yellow brass. And here's a C-clip, it doesn't stick, and it's got the reddish yellow color. This piece was internal, it's still got a piece of plastic on which should be removed, and with a screwdriver it's easy to pop that off. And it's hard to tell what it is by its color. So again, using the file, I get a silver color, so this would be more zinc die cast. Here's that internal stem to the faucet, doesn't stick, but if you can look at this end, it's got a silver color to it. Filing shows me it's still a silver color, but it was hard to file. So I know then that this is actually stainless steel. So to get the best price for the yellow brass, I need to cut the stainless steel end off. And then here's some of the screws, and you'll see, checking with the magnet, they're iron. So if I had left this mixture together and tried to sell it as yellow brass, the first thing the buyer would have said was, no, that's contaminated yellow brass. I'll give you 25 cents a pound, rather than yellow brass at $1.75 a pound.
And all of the contaminants can still be recycled as scrap metal, right?
All the contaminants can be recycled, so I can still recycle this as iron and get 7 cents for it. But I've upgraded the yellow brass to clean. So these two screws didn't stick to a magnet. And again, from experience, I know they're stainless steel. I filed them and they're hard to file. So I'd throw those in the stainless steel bucket to keep it from contaminating the yellow brass. This handle doesn't stick. And when I file it, and it probably won't show, it actually turns out to be plastic, which is becoming very common. and it's lightweight, so that also tells me it's plastic. So between filing it and its weight, I know it's plastic, and there's no market for plastic, so this unfortunately goes in the trash. And these stems didn't stick. And when I file that one, it has a yellow cast to it, so I'd throw this one in with the yellow brass. So that's the disassembly and the importance of taking a faucet apart to get the highest value. Now, there's a lot of flexible connectors associated with plumbing, and checking with a magnet, it doesn't stick. So I know from experience the flexible hose itself is stainless steel, but the connectors on the ends, when you file the connectors, they have a yellow tint to them. So I use a bolt cutter, and I cut right where the groove is, and so I can recycle the screw nut as yellow brass at $1.75 a pound versus the stainless steel flexible tubing, which is still contaminated. And stainless steel contaminated brings me 10 cents a pound. And even though it seems insignificant, when you cut off 50 ends from stainless steel, you end up with a couple pounds of yellow brass. So it is worth the time to get the yellow brass off the end of the flexible tubes. And what you cut off can still be sold as contaminated yellow brass because there's still a stem inside that's yellow brass versus the stainless steel on the outside. Here's a spigot from a water fountain, and when I filed it yesterday in preparation, it was yellow underneath, so this spigot to a drinking fountain is yellow brass. Again, when I worked on this faucet yesterday to see what the materials were, I filed right there and it's yellow in color. And I filed one of the handles here and it's yellow in color. And I also filed the housing. So this one, except for some screws which are under the button here, probably the whole thing will end up being yellow brass. Contrary to this one where the housing was zinc die cast, this housing is all yellow brass. So this faucet turns out to be more valuable to us than that one. This is a common faucet that you see. It has plastic handles which have to be removed, and the top pops off and there's a screw inside that you unscrew. And again, unfortunately, there's no market for plastic. And you see there's some more plastic stem to the faucet, so this nut has to be removed and that plastic has to be removed. There's plastic on the bottom. There's a screen here on the faucet, and the screens are typically stainless steel, so that little screen needs to be popped out of there. And the housing, when I filed it yesterday, is silver in color, so this is another zinc die cast housing rather than yellow brass housing. And this one visually says it's yellow brass, but again, color is very misleading, so I still took the time yesterday to file a V in to make sure it was yellow underneath. Same thing with the handles, because sometimes the main housing and the handles will be two different materials. But in this case, it turned out the handle was also yellow brass. But again, there's still screws there, so you need to remove those to make sure they aren't iron. There's plastic on the bottom, and there's that stainless steel screen again. So one of the important messages I need to get across is don't believe the color. Always confirm the color with a file or with a hacksaw. So another product that brings us a fair amount of income from yellow brass are doorknobs. And so you can recycle the doorknob whole as it is and get about 25 cents a pound because of the iron contamination and the zinc die cast contamination in the hub there. So in order to upgrade this to get the $1.75 for the yellow brass, there's a C-clamp, a little clamp that's right there that's holding this product together. And when you move that C-clamp, you get this piece and you get this piece of housing. Both the C-clamp and the housing are iron, so that's 7 cents. But this piece doesn't stick, so this is $1.75. So it's labor intensive, so if you don't have the labor, you still should recycle this as contaminated yellow brass, getting 25 cents a pound, whereas if you throw the whole thing in the iron, you only get 7 cents a pound. And then in the knob itself, there's this piece of zinc die cast, doesn't stick to the magnet, that holds the this piece of frame onto the door. And so the way to get that zinc die cast out of there, you have to use a chisel and pound it out. So again, that's why it's labor intensive. But again, if you want the $1.75, you have to go through the step of getting the zinc die cast out. And this is just a different form of a doorknob. And again, when you disassemble it, you get a piece of yellow brass like this. And sometimes the yellow brass will be plated with a silver color, or it may be stainless steel. So again, you have to use the file. And again, when I file it, there's a yellow color that shows up. So even though visually they appear to be different materials, in fact, this is yellow brass that's been plated to look like stainless steel. And then the key part of it, the basic material is zinc die cast, but the stem is iron. So to get the value out of the zinc die cast, that stem has to be removed, and there's a little C-clamp that's holding it in place. And then it appears they've got a piece of yellow brass plating it here. Check with the file, and it's yellow. And in order to get that off, again, the usefulness of the wire cutter. Now I get $1.75, even though it's a little piece, it all adds up. And then when you take this C-clamp out, the rest of it comes apart. And so you end up with some iron, and you end up with some zinc die cast. Now, one of the scourges of doing plumbing is, as I mentioned earlier, plastic is becoming more popular. So here's a shower head that looks to be some kind of metal. But when you take your file and file it, underneath it's a gray piece of plastic. So this has no value to the recycling program. And this was a piece of a shower door, which again visually appears to be yellow brass. And when I file it, it's gray underneath. So it's another piece of plastic made to look like yellow brass. And here's some locking plates from hardware. And these 4 pieces look to be yellow brass, but when you look at the edge of this one, it's silver in color. So it's either iron or aluminum. When I check with the magnet, it doesn't stick, so this piece is actually aluminum made to look like yellow brass. So these 4 pieces don't stick to a magnet and appear to be yellow brass, but again, I check them just to make sure it's yellow. That's yellow. This one appeared to be silver, but underneath it's a yellow color. So this is yellow brass plated to look like silver. This one also has a yellow tint to it. So again, it's plated to look like stainless steel, but in fact, the majority of the material is yellow brass. And here's a piece of yellow brass. Oh, it sticks to a magnet, even though visually it appears to be yellow brass. So this would be iron. And here's a replacement end to a hose. Turns out to be iron repair part and a brass insert. And it's very difficult to get those two separated, so I in fact sell this as contaminated yellow brass because I don't have the time to take them apart. And this was another faceplate. And again, so the next material we'll talk about is zinc die cast, which is probably one of the more difficult materials to categorize because it has the color of aluminum, although the shade is a little more gray than most aluminum products. And the principal characteristic of distinguishing zinc die cast, and what the die cast refers to is again the method by which the product is produced. A mold in this shape is made, and then the zinc material is poured through holes in the mold, and you can see the little entry points where the molten metal was poured into the cast. So the die cast refers to the method of producing the product. Zinc is the principal material. And again, zinc is non-magnetic, so it doesn't stick to a magnet. And so clean zinc die cast will bring about 50 cents a pound versus iron at 7. So again, the principal contaminant is iron, in this case a screw, where the basic hinge is visually what appears to be yellow brass. When I file it, it's silver in color. But the product is heavy, and so the two distinguishing characteristics of zinc die cast are it's heavier than aluminum for the same amount of mass of material. And it's silver in color, although often has a gray shade to it. So this was from a door handle, and it doesn't stick. This is an electrical fitting that has some iron screws that need to be removed, but the main part of the connection is zinc die cast. Here's an end from a bar from a bathroom. Again, appears to be yellow brass. But when I file it, it's soft and it's silver in color, but it's heavy. So rather than being silver and called aluminum, it's silver and it's heavy, so it's zinc die cast. It has a little screw which is yellow in color, so that little screw is probably yellow brass. Again, here's a piece of material which has been painted white, but it's silver underneath and it's very heavy, and it doesn't stick to a magnet, so zinc die cast. Here's another product that's heavy, easy to file, and silver, but it's got a screw. So in order to get the best price here, that little piece of iron, if left together, would be 7 cents a pound for this, versus now that I remove that single screw, I get 50 cents a pound for this. Another door stop, silver in color, doesn't stick to a magnet. Here's a drawer handle. The screw is iron and the little faceplate is iron. The doorknob itself is silver. It doesn't stick to a magnet once you get the screw out. So a lot of door handles, doorknobs are zinc die cast because it's cheaper to produce than yellow brass is. So these are some ends to light globes, holding the light globe in place, different colors. And when I filed the 3 yesterday, even though the visual appearance is different, the underlying metal is all the same and it's relatively heavy, so these are zinc die cast. So here's another door handle. The handle itself doesn't stick, the faceplate doesn't stick, but the screw does. When I file the faceplate, the underlying color is yellow, so the faceplate is yellow brass. When I file the handle is silver. So there's a difference between this faceplate and the handle. So you need to remove the screws, then pop out that screw holder and separate the yellow brass from the zinc die cast. Again, here's some more knobs that appear to be yellow brass. Turns out to be iron. So the first thing I always do is check with the magnet, because that's the easiest separation to make, magnetic versus non-magnetic. Here the screw sticks, but the drawer handle itself doesn't. So now I've upgraded the handle, but I need to find out what material this really is made out of. When I use the file, it's silver in color and it's heavy for the small amount of material, so that's zinc die cast. On the other hand, when I file this one, it's yellow underneath. So a similar doorknob to the one we just looked at, but this one is yellow brass. So that's a quick lesson on zinc die cast. The next material we'll look at is stainless steel. And again, we're looking at contaminated stainless steel at 10 cents a pound, clean stainless steel at 45 cents a pound versus things that stick to a magnet at 7 cents a pound. A little bit like zinc die cast, there's often confusion between stainless steel and aluminum. They both have a silver color, although aluminum, the color is a little different shade. So we looked at this earlier as sheet aluminum. What distinguishes this as stainless steel, besides not being magnetic, is when you try and file it. It's very hard material to file. So even though it's a silver color, it's stainless steel versus being aluminum. Here's the drain from a sink. Doesn't stick to a magnet. When you try and file the edge, again, it's very hard to file. So that's stainless steel. But about half of these will be iron. So I check each one to make sure that it's clean stainless versus being iron. These are some screens that come from inside of a dishwasher. They both look to be stainless steel because stainless steel is resistant to rust. But this one, in fact, sticks to a magnet. So again, visually, while they appear to be the same, this one doesn't stick. So this is stainless. This one sticks. So this is iron. I put them together. I've now taken the stainless steel from 45 cents a pound down to 10 cents a pound because of the contamination. Again, this little piece of material appears to be stainless steel, looking at the color, but in fact sticks to a magnet. So again, the magnet is always the most important tool. All the pieces of material need to be checked with a magnet. Here's a faceplate from a doorway. Doesn't stick. When I try and file, it's very hard, but it's silver in color, so that would be a stainless steel faceplate. Here's a handle off of an appliance, probably. Doesn't stick. Very hard to file. I put that with stainless steel. Here's an antenna. Doesn't stick. File it, it's silver in color, but it was hard to file. So antennas are about 50% yellow brass and 50% stainless steel. So the file becomes important to see what the color is. Then screws, lots and lots of screws. And some of these appear to be yellow brass by color, the others are silver, probably being iron. So I check all screws. In fact, what appeared to be yellow brass is iron, and the other ones are silver and are iron. But a lot of the silver ones, in fact, didn't stick to a magnet. And those would end up being stainless steel. So I check all screws to separate the iron ones at 7 cents a pound from the stainless steel ones at 45 cents a pound. Our biggest product in stainless steel are kitchen sinks and bar sinks. And again, almost all the sinks have an iron piece welded on the edges for fastening purposes. So while we separate the kitchen sinks, we have to sell them as contaminated stainless steel at 10 cents a pound. But occasionally they won't have that iron ridge, and so some stainless steel sinks will in fact be clean. Most of our clean stainless comes from appliances, dishwashers, stoves, dryers, and the more modern ones. Stainless steel has become more popular over the last 10 years versus the older appliances. So that's a quick lesson on stainless steel. So our next discussion will be on wire, copper wire and aluminum wire, ways to upgrade the value of the wire to get more income. One of the first things that needs to be done is to separate coax cable, which feeds most computers and TVs. The reason being, what appears to be a copper wire, in fact, is a piece of iron. So this needs to be thrown in with the iron at 7 cents a pound. If you don't separate the coax cable, you've ruined your chances to get a higher value out of a wire. Now, often connected to coax cable are splitter boxes. The splitter box is non-magnetic. It's actually zinc die-cast material with a circuit board inside, but most of them have at least one screw. So in order to sell this as contaminated zinc die-cast, that screw needs to be magnetic. The next grade up on wire are Christmas wire. They have a separate category for Christmas wire, so you don't need to separate the plugs and the light holders, you just sell the Christmas wire as a whole. Doesn't bring in a lot of value. It's 15 cents a pound, but it's if you throw it in with the iron, you get 7 cents. So there's some advantage to separating it out. In terms of weight, the biggest wire is number 2 insulated, and the most common sources are power cords. Now, if you leave the ends on, if you leave the connectors on, so if you leave the plug on, or the printer cable connectors, or electronic connectors, you'll radically decrease the value. So clean insulated wire, by cutting that end off, I've now gone from contaminated wire probably getting 10 or 15 cents a pound to number 2 insulator that's been cleaned 40 cents a pound. So by the simple removal of this plug, I've upgraded the value of the number 2 insulated wire. This is also a good product for people who have limited skills because it just requires the cutting off of all the connectors. And you also make sure if you've got any wire that still has the twist connector, the twist connector needs to be cut off because most twist connectors have a little iron wire inside of it. Again, it contaminates your whole load. This bunch of material came out of a ceiling fan. That piece of iron there, turns out the connector has iron inside of it. The yellow ones seem to be non-magnetic, but it's still plastic. So I remove all the connectors from the wire to get the best value. But those little strands of wire are also number 2 insulated. And here's a connector that is actually screwed together. So that's why the connectors need to come off, because of that iron contamination. Now we don't throw the plugs and the connectors away. The buyer we work with has a category called copper bearing material. And that's what this plug is considered, because even though it appears to be silver, when you file it underneath, it's yellow brass. But I check all of them and separate the ones that do have iron from the ones that don't have iron. And in going through a shipment, this was used to wrap around a power cord to keep it in a coil. And that's iron, so if that had been left on, that would also contaminate the shipment. These little, I'm not sure what the proper term for this is, but inside here is coiled copper wire, so I throw those in with the copper bearing material. Next category of wire is braided copper wire, or wire that has a shellac coating on it. And when you look at the end of this little strand, it's made up of probably 15 individual strands of copper wire. So they consider that a lower grade than household wire, which is a single strand. So I separate those two, and it seems more recently they're starting to silver coat some of the braided wire, and so that silver coat contamination. So I separate the silver coated copper wire from the braided copper wire. The other thing to make sure on the silver ones is to check with the magnet, because sometimes there's picture frame wire that looks just like electrical wire. And so I always check the silver ones with a magnet to make sure it's not picture frame wire. Braided wire would bring about $1.75 a pound. This would bring about $1.50 a pound because of the silver coating. And then household wire with the insulation on is called number 1 insulated, and it brings $1.15 a pound. If you take the insulation off, this is called bright wire, and it brings $2.30 a pound. So a significant difference between bright wire and number 1 insulated, which is $1.15. And the way that I get the insulation off is I watch TV at night using a box cutter. You just strip the insulation off. So by that simple process of cleaning up the number 1 insulated at $1.15 to get bright wire at $2.30 a pound. But it's labor intensive. So those are the different grades of wire that we shoot for. Looking at copper pipe, there's 2 grades. There's number 2 copper pipe, which is contaminated with solder, and number 2 contaminated brings $2.05 a pound. Number 1 copper wire that doesn't have any solder on it, it's clean, brings $2.25 a pound. So by the simple process of separating these two, it's the difference between 205 and 225. And lastly, we'll talk about aluminum wire. There's 2 grades of aluminum wire. There's aluminum wire with insulation, it brings 30 cents a pound. It is possible to strip the insulation off using a box cutter, but the more modern wire, this plastic is very hard, and so it's a difficult process, and normally I sell this newer insulated wire as insulated. But if you're ambitious enough to strip the insulation off, clean aluminum wire with no insulation brings 78 cents a pound. So you go from 30 cents a pound to 78 if you're willing to put in the hard labor to strip the wire off. So that's the recommendation on wire. And motors bring us 10 cents a pound. And basically the buyer is after the copper wire that's inside the electric motor. In this particular case with the skill saw, they would also be interested in the aluminum housing. If one is really ambitious, although it takes a lot of effort, you can disassemble this between the motor and the aluminum housings, but we tend not to have the time to do that, so we just sell skill saws as is. This came out of a washing machine, and it has a lot of copper wire associated with it. And so we put that in with the electric motors. This came out of a ceiling fan. The rotor has a lot of copper wire associated with it. I can't get this off, but this also has some aluminum in the housing outside the rotor. And so we sell those as part of electric motors. The last thing we throw in with the electric motors are power tools. But you have to remove the battery, which is nickel cadmium. Batteries are lithium ion batteries. But they'll take the hand tool itself because of the copper wire that's associated with the motor. So it's only the difference between 7 cents a pound and 10 cents a pound, but it's easy to do. It's easy to make the separation. The last material I'll mention is lead. We do get lead in the form of weights from tires and weights from fishermen, and just lead from safety purposes. So we do separate out lead, and we also get a number of lead acid batteries from automobiles, lawnmowers, and charging kits. And so clean lead brings 70 cents a pound, and auto batteries bring 30 cents a pound. So we do make an effort to keep those materials separated from the iron.